went to the bathroom. Blood. Red. I was diagnosed with advanced colon cancer. If the contents of your intestines leak into your abdominal cavity, septic, massive shock and death. I have been a personal trainer my entire life. Before, I'd post 2 to 3 times a day. I did this because for me, being validated by people that don't love me and have no reason to appreciate what I do, but somehow they do, was extremely meaningful to me in terms of my purpose. I remember I was so terrified because my wife, we learned that she's pregnant. I am gonna actually have 2 children. A friend of mine could tell I was freaked. And she said, look, man, it seems like you need to take a break. I have a beach house. She sent me there. And then Barry said, Daddy, is there any such thing as a purple puka shell? I said, no, sweetie, but you want to look for one? She's all, yeah. Moments after she asked me that, out of all the stuff that was in the sand in front of me, the biggest puka shell, by far, perfectly round, with a puka in it, something said, hold this up. When I held that up to the light came through that ring and it was purple. At that moment, I knew things were going to be okay. Everyone says that I'm a real warrior for getting through cancer. In my case, not at all. The warrior was my wife. It took her not just 6 months that I was in surgery and chemotherapy. It took her years afterwards to save my life. Every day, my wife, I know deep in my heart, there's no one I could have encountered in 1,000 lifetimes that I think would be better for me than her. And I was lucky enough to live with her. I consider myself one of the luckiest people on this planet for that alone.
Greater Good Radio, connect, learn, heal, and grow, is brought to you by Brain Gain Hawaii, a boutique executive recruiting, career development, and coaching firm. Learn more at braingainhi.com. Welcome to Greater Good Radio. Today we're with my friend, Bill Maeda, the owner of FitPro.
What's up, Evan?
So FitPro, I mean, if you take one quick look at you, you're in great physical shape. When people ask you, like, Bill Maeda, who are you? What do you do? Then how do you explain that?
Well, you know, Evan, I have been a personal trainer my entire life. So when I was younger in high school, I guess my heart was set on the military. And I grew up in the 80s, watching all the Rambo and all that stuff. So just like a lot of guys, I wanted to be in the special forces. But I had surgery on my right shoulder from just football in high school. And they put 2 screws in my shoulder that made me permanently ineligible for military service. So I'd been training myself all those years in high school in preparation, and I actually enjoyed the training side of it. So, after I discovered I couldn't get into special forces, I decided, well, people are always asking me to train them in high school, and then after I graduated, that people always wanted me to just train them. So I started doing that, and I've been doing that ever since. But back then, in the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of people were into bodybuilding, because bodybuilding was huge back then, especially in the early 90s. But that was never really why I did it, because I had trained to be a soldier when I was in high school. That training for combatives was the only thing that really made sense. And I'm not unique, in that regard. There's plenty of guys that subscribe to that. But a lot of times people want to know, some of these movements I post to my socials are seemingly a little weird looking. But everything I do in some way has to make me or somebody else better at combatives or the other skills involved in soldiering, like moving distances with load, like rucking, things like that. I'm not necessarily good at these things, especially now, but my motivation and everything I do has to do with that.
Wait, so is that considered functional movements then? Like
to me, the word functional, it's so ill-defined. And I guess it would be functional if the function is to fight or to soldier. Then I try to design my workouts and the exercises I do around that function. But, I guess, yeah. If we're talking about something that is specific to a given function, then I try to make my things specific to that.
I'm interested in this piece. Wait, you wanted to be special forces from when you were young.
Yeah.
And then even now, you still kind of feel like you got to train for combat-ish.
You know why? Not because I expect to have combat or fight or, I don't like, there's plenty of guys that could beat my ass. And even in younger years, no shortage of those guys. The reason why I like to train for even after I was ineligible for service, was for general people. Like a lot of people, my clients are like, and when I tell them, my approach, they're like, "Oh, I'm not a fighter." And I said, "Well, it's nice that you can say that, but there might be times in life where you're not going to really have the option of deciding that necessarily." But that aside, statistically, most people will live and die without ever having to fight another human being, like for real, unless they want to, like for fun. But I guess the way I look at it is, if you are in shape to fight, if you can strike and you can do a little bit of grappling, groundwork, and you can move the way a soldier does, just for a few miles under load or running, if you're in that kind of shape, just basic, you can do almost everything else that life would ask from you. And I'm sure other things like other disciplines could say the same. But to me, if a person doesn't have a defined sport that they are training for, one sport, going back to this fight thing, one sport that we might all have to participate in and not necessarily voluntarily could be fighting. No matter who you are, where you are, if there are other people in your vicinity, that could always be an option. So it just makes sense to me. If you train a fight, you're training for a lot of other things.
Was it when you were growing up you got into a lot of fights? Or
No, not at all.
Or what?
That's why I'm kind of probably one of the most boring fitness influencers out there, because I don't have a lot of trauma. I grew up normal.
That's what
I mean,
I'm
you
wondering.
and I went to the same private school, Punahou, right? That was a nice place,
Yeah.
right? I didn't get beat up too much there. And I grew up in Hawaii. I grew up east side, but I still felt, I guess, unsafe. Growing up in the 80s, I actually realized I kind of had like a mental illness of sorts where I was obsessed from the age of about 14 or 15. This sounds crazy, man, but I was convinced that everyone was going to die in a nuclear war. It was a Cold War back then, and I guess I watched too many movies.
Was it from movies?
From reading books. And, like, remember that movie War Games with Matthew Broderick?
Yeah, that
and there
computer.
were all of these DEF CON 4. And, I went to a lot. I just went kind of nutty. Like what people thought was my just kind of like, oh, Bill likes that movie Rambo. I was, for a while in high school, I was really freaked out, and I was convinced that I was going to die. And I lived that way.
Was your family military?
Well, my dad was. Actually, I was born in Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay.
My brother and myself were born in Kentucky because at the time my dad was in the service. He was a ophthalmologist for the Army.
So he's doing eye surgery for the military?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
He's 88 now, and he recently stopped doing surgery. He still works. Yeah.
Probably kind of stop.
He loves
type of,
to. Yeah.
Yeah. He's from Hawaii?
Yeah.
He was born and raised in Hawaii?
Maui.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my mom's from Laupohoihoi. She passed 5 years ago, but yeah, everyone's from here.
And then your grandparents were in the military or no?
No.
So even during like World War II, nothing?
Grandpa on my dad's side, I think, was in the service at the time. But same thing, they never deployed.
He wasn't like 442 Kaing or
No,
something?
no, not at all. Yeah.
And your dad was in the military his whole career?
No, he got out right around the year I was born. I think he was in for 4 years. And actually, his term with the military is just, I don't know if it'd be called luck or not, but whenever Schofield deployed to Vietnam, he had just finished, so he didn't have to go. I don't know, that could have something to do with why I'm here, but...
That's so interesting. And this could be an aside too. I don't know if I explained to you earlier also about kind of what I've been doing for the last few years. So the reason that this came back about is in 2018, my wife got super sick.
Okay.
I didn't know what was going on, right? It was like, oh my God, she can only last for like 2 hours and then she would just collapse. And we're like, oh, this might be it, right? My dad was going through cancer treatments. It was actually a period at that time where I left for like a 1 year period for the most part, over 2 years. Like I'd be gone for a month, come back for a couple weeks because he was going through cancer treatment. So I had to go. She had to hold down everything, right? Our businesses, our work, the kids. We just had our fourth kid at that time. Oh, wow. Like literally just had the fourth. And then she was doing her PhD full time. Wow. So her body broke down. For sure. Right? Then January comes around, I'm cooking noodles like a good Chinese boy. I try to get the noodle off the side. I miss. All the boiling water goes on my stomach. I rub it, and then all my skin comes off. Like, oh, got second-degree burns. Got to go strob and heal this now, right?
shit.
Then I got sick for 2 months. And then I bought a one-wheel, the one-wheel motorized skateboards. Yeah, I bought one of those.
The one wheel, the one
Yeah.
with a fat
Yeah,
wheel.
yeah.
Oh.
And like my first or second day, I ate it, and then I broke my back. So now I had burst fracture in my T12. I had discs that bust. I fractured my tailbone. I was like out of it, right? So I was
Wait,
like,
and this is all
2019.
19. Okay,
Right?
not all. I hope we're still not in 2018 because that's a lot to have.
Well, it was over like a few
Kind of
months
like-
period. So that was
Yeah.
April of 2019. My wife had gotten sick in like November of 18.
It's just a
So
stretch
yeah,
of
it's like
time. That
increasing of problems, right? So I had to go get all the help, right? So she went to go see a spiritual advisor of ours. His name is Kaulana Yoshimoto. You know Dean Yoshimoto? He's like his brother, Kaulana,
I don't know his brother.
or Debbie,
Sorry.
because Debbie's around your age. She goes to see him. He helps her, right? He helps her out. She had some, it's like boundary issue kind of thing. So it's like her core belief was like, I'll do anything for my friends and family, even if it kills me.
Oh.
And that's what was kind of happening. She would just push it, not taking care of herself, and her body would shut down.
Okay.
She goes, you better go next because you get way more problems than me. I'm like, okay, but I don't want to go. But I was in bad shape, so I went. He basically told me, he said, your spiritual alignment, it's out of whack. He goes, your spirit guides are telling me that your injuries are getting worse. And he goes, you keep trying to push it. I go, yeah. He goes, you want to just work? I go, yeah. He goes, you can't even move. I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to work. You know what I mean? I got new business going on. I know it's cranking. I just need to get over this stuff. He's like, no. He said, like, what is your mission? I'm like, my mission is kick ass. I kicked everybody's ass. That's my mission. And I thought it was great. I personally thought it was a great mission. He's like, nope, not cutting it. He goes, if you keep pushing it with that kind of mission and your alignment off, because your next injury is worse. I'm like, no, I'm not taking a worse injury. I'm in like 9 out of 10 pain. I'm not taking a worse injury. He's like, well, you better figure this out. So I spent like every damn minute I could, right? Meditations, spiritual stuff, therapy, physical therapy, the whole 9 yards. And then something cracked open. I don't know what it was. I started to get like panic attacks.
Does it feel like claustrophobia, but you're not locked in anything?
It felt like I lost complete control of my body. I'm in it, like convulsing and so on, but I can't do anything about it. So it's so scary, right? So I started looking for help. Can't get any help. Can't get any fucking help. There's no more like
What
therapists
kind of
and
help?
stuff.
Like
I was trying to get
shrinks? Like
anything.
psychologists?
Therapists, healers, whatever, maybe 2019 till now, basically getting trained in stuff myself and then doing all the modalities and being a client and so on. So I was able to get through that.
What are these modalities?
So, internal family systems, have you ever heard of that? IFS. Brain spotting is another one. It's kind of like EMDR, but it's like, I don't know if you ever heard of EMDR.
I've heard of it.
EMDR is used for like PTSD and things like
Right.
that.
Okay.
So brain spotting is kind of like the next version. And then Imago, it's called Imago. It's like relationship therapy.
Okay.
But a lot of the work, like individual, is relationship anyways, because it's relationship with your own self.
Okay.
And then everything from like spiritual stuff like Reiki or energy healing to psychedelics, psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. So it's almost like the psychedelic, to me, this is my own personal opinion, is like kind of like the anesthesia when you go for surgery. Like you could do your hip surgery with no anesthesia.
Sure.
Would suck super bad. And I don't know who can make it really through that, but you can do it. You go to anesthesia, you do the hip surgery, you come out, now you recover from that.
Right.
Same kind of thing. If you don't do the work internally, like if someone's just having a fun trip or whatever, then you come back out still with the same issue, right? But if you're going in there, mindfully, this is what I'm doing with the right support and so on, you do the work, when you come back out, that stuff is done. And when it's done, it's done. Yeah.
So fast forward to now, how are you doing?
I mean, pretty fantastic. So that's why it's almost like my hobby, more or less. And I get to have interesting conversations. But that's kind of what led me back into doing this. Because first time around, I don't know if you remember, but it was like all about like who's the biggest baller, how did they get to where they're at, and how did community service help, right? And then this time around, it's basically who am I interested in for whatever reason that may be, and how do I have a deep conversation with them?
Cool.
Yeah. So the reason I brought that kind of piece up was it's interesting to hear because in the trainings that I go to, they show this one study where they take mice. I don't know if you've ever seen this. There's a guy named Dr. Brian Diaz. He now has a lab. I think it's UCLA. Used to be at Emory. So take the mice. And what they'll do is they will shock the mice and have them smell this like cherry blossom kind of scent, right? So you shock them enough to the point where you have them smell the cherry blossom and they're freaking out, right? Then they mate them and then they separate the mice back out And then once the female mouse gives birth, after they start to grow, they separate out the kids.
Oh, and then they give the smell to the kids, and the kids freak out too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And guess what? Guess which one has more of a reaction? The kids have a higher reaction. So it shows how it goes right through. So they're correlating this to, let's say, Holocaust kind of families.
Right.
Could be other wartime stuff and so on. You know what I mean? How things can pass through even in the DNA. So that's why when you were saying what you were saying, I don't know where this is coming from or so on, that's not super uncommon, right? It might not necessarily be mine, but I feel it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay, so along those lines, if you want to go take it from a deeper place, if I wasn't training anybody, and if I was just training myself, I'd still train this way because since I can remembering, which would be age 4, I've always been what I would like to, I guess we'll call protective of things. My mother, my family members, I was like gangster about it. From a very young age, I was interested in knives and guns and weapons, and from very preschool, I was into that.
Ninja stars.
Anything.
Yeah. Okay.
I was even folding them out of paper. The ones that anything that you could throw or could project or stick in us or kill. I was into it. And my mom, I take a lot of my traits from my mom and her side of the family, just physically and psychologically. And now I realize my mom, growing up, she had to raise 3 of us in the 70s. My dad was there, but, back in those days, mom was with us all the time. So it was kind of like a lot of pressure on her. I realize now as a parent myself that my mom, oftentimes the way she reacted to us, it was just panic, or she was a lot of fear in my mom. And she told us about her upbringing on Big Island. My grandpa was strict, as was all people of that generation. He wasn't particularly bad, but he was just, old school. And then my mom kind of raised us that way. But I do believe that what you say about the transference of trauma from one generation to the next, because I've always had this wonder. I've asked my wife, why do I have this thing in me, this growl, this thing that's always just, now that I'm older and I have a slightly different perspective, but it's only since cancer 12 years ago and then having my second daughter that I've kind of gotten, and I'm just getting older now, but I've always had this thing that just growls in me and just is always ready to be attacked. I never trust in society. I guess I'm an unprepared prepper.
Does it feel like it's yours?
I've always wondered. I've always been perplexed as why do everyone else seem to be relaxed? No one else seems to care about being, attacked on the street. And my wife would always say, of all people to attack, why would people want to attack you? And I said, you know what? There's people that specifically want to attack. I'd always come up with an excuse on why
Let's choose the biggest, scariest dude.
Yeah, right? I don't know, man. That's why the psychedelics I'm at, because I've always felt like there's something inside of me that, I don't know, there's some issue. I think everybody has some issue that's deep inside that. Yeah. But going forward, I've always been loaded this way. Like I said, if you saw the way I was raised, I mean, nobody that I can recall ever abused me or ignored me or bullied me in school. That's why I even was harsh on myself growing up, because I was going, you act like you have so many problems and you've got the most ass life in the world. What the fuck is the matter with you? Because you're growing up in Kahala, you're going to Punahou, your parents drive you to school, you get 3 to 4 to 5 meals, whatever you want a day. Everything's new on you. What is your problem? I was always ready for things to go wrong in the most utopian environment you could have growing up. It's very privileged. So I don't know, man.
The pieces that you're talking to me about, and I talk to people about this constantly because I spend quite a bit of time doing coaching, but the coaching is really in this kind of realm. Most of the people I deal with, they are top of their game in general, but the emotional side, the inner side, all that kind of stuff, that's a whole different animal. That's where we kind of work. Anyways, on this one, the reason I keep asking you is that there's another aspect to what kind of dysregulates us. And I don't know if it's this or if it isn't. And depends on what people believe or not. I don't know a better name for it other than like entities. We see entities a lot. So entity would be something that's not yours. So like if we look at it, we say like trauma. So trauma is not what happens to us. It's what happens in us as a result of what happened to us.
Right.
What happens to us is like traumatic, got a fucking crack. Boom. That's traumatic. But I heal from that. But what happens inside is, oh, now I'm scared. Now I'm afraid. Now I don't want to talk out. Now, I got to prove this to other people. So now that becomes the trauma. And until that's processed, meaning like there's an environment that those parts of me that are now holding all this confusion, pain, whatever it may be, can express themselves. It's there. It's stuck in time. The ways we can get this plenty different ways. One, from stuff happening. One, from stuff that should have happened. Somebody should have been there for me. Neglect is a big deal in that area, right? Could get it vicariously. You're walking down the street, someone just gets run over by a car. You're watching right there the whole time stuff. Now you got it, right? Like it's never happened to me. I didn't get run over, but oh my God, I'm right there, right? The other pieces are, it could be generational, where that baby comes right through the line, we don't know, or it happens in traits, because if you think about it, when you go, okay, this family, they are like alcoholics. But that's not really it. It's the trauma that runs through it, that's carried through it, and alcohol happens to be the numbing agent of choice, right? So the other piece here, which is kind of a big one, that is entity. Some other energy, whatever it might be, that comes in and just fucks with us. We feel like it's us or so on because we're so used to it. A lot of times it comes in during times where we're either afraid something happened or whatever. And I mean, even in like the Catholic Church, they have full manuals and stuff on this type of thing. Every indigenous culture, shamans are typically dealing with entities and so on. I mean, so that's why I keep asking, like, this feel like you, this you, and so on.
So you're
'Cause this
talking
might
about
not be you, dude.
not quite demonic possession, but possession of entities.
Yep.
And if we want to call them demons, which I'm sure, you know what?
Possession is like when it kind of takes you over and you have no more control.
And you're, right. Like,
But entities can just be there, kind of like
they're
making you
worse,
scared.
man. They're like in the background. They're like parasites. They make you feel
Exactly.
like you're in
It's
control,
exactly like a parasite. You're the host.
right?
That's the parasite.
And the less you know they exist, the more they like it, because then they can live on you longer. And
Because most people are not spending a lot of time internally trying to, being in touch with themselves so they know what's the difference of what's me and what's not me. So everything feels like me at that point.
yeah, I'm open to that. Because a lot of people will be like, "What are you talking about? Ghosts and devils and shit?"
I see it all the time.
No,
all the
you know
time.
what? I've always believed in that.
Yeah.
I've always believed that there are forces well outside of just our realm of consciousness, or whatever we call this thing that we are as people. I find it's impossible for there not to be something far outside of us, because I'm not really that impressed with us as we are. I mean, we can do impressive things, but when you take the grand scope, there has to be more. Evan, before you reached out to me, I had to stop my training outright. I had to stop it. Even now, I might post something, whereas before I'd post 2 to 3 times a day. For 4 years, I did that. Every day I'd go outside, every day. Rain, holidays, foreign countries, didn't matter. I would train myself in something and post it. I started 2020 during the lockdown, just for fun for my clients. I had no idea of growing social media, anything. 4 years later now, I am so broken. Physically, neurologically, everything. My nervous system is fried. My tendons, my ligaments, my arches are completely collapsed. My ankles are pronated. My shoulders.
So you've beaten your body
I have beaten
to a
shit
pulp.
out of myself. And like you said, you don't realize your body, if you slowly crank, what is that? Everyone loves that boiling toad analogy, right? If you slowly turn up the heat, you can boil a frog. I'm sure everybody on this planet in some way is boiling the frog on themselves, just slowly dialing up that heat and just taking it and taking it. Next thing you know, you're just boiled alive. And that's where I felt like I was boiled. Every workout I did, I was realizing I'm overdrawing maxed out credit cards. The workouts I was doing, I knew deep in my heart weren't in any way going to make me better or stronger, faster, whatever. I realized I was just kind of doing it because I was on this hamster wheel of social media. And it's kind of funny because I don't get a lot of financial reward from it at all. People think, oh, if you have more than 1 million or so followers, then money and fame. Not at all, man. I still got to go to work. And I drive the same car. I think I met you a long time ago, like in early 2000 something.
No, we met in the gym at freaking Punahou School.
Yeah, but after we graduated, though,
Yeah.
you and I, there was some MLM, I think, that I was trying to sell you fucking back then.
I was in
Remember?
Equinox too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember coming to this house.
Yeah.
The same car I drove up here and then. I'm still driving that car. No more paint. I like that car, but we're going to get a new one. We're actually getting one in the next few weeks. But I've been driving the same car for my daughter's 17 years. So yeah, I don't do this for money. I did this because initially when people started responding to it, here's something you'll like. I've struggled my entire life with extremely, devastatingly low self-esteem. My entire life.
Shame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always wondered prior to the lockdown in 2020, all the years I'd been working in my little studio, 600 square foot box in Kapahulu, the only people that knew that I existed there were my clients. And that was okay for me at the time, But I always wondered, I'd been there for over 20 years, just doing the same thing, not expanding my business because I was afraid to. And I had no confidence in myself to do so. And yeah, I always wondered if what I was doing was worth shit to anybody outside of the walls of my office. And the response that I got from initially YouTube, which is where I was just posting, and then eventually TikTok and then Instagram, and was that apparently some of the things I had been working on and that only my clients and myself and my wife and my daughters knew, there was some value to it. And that was very healing for me to validate some of these things that I'd always wondered, this crazy shit that I've been doing here all by myself. I spent hundreds of hours by myself in that office when there were no clients there, doing the things that people see me do on Instagram now. So what might be new to them, that stuff is old as shit to me. And being validated, at least for some of it, some of the stuff I post might just be only relevant to me, but my thing has always been, I don't post what I feel is going to do well or make people like me or follow me. I just take whatever I did on a given day, either the best part of it, the worst part, or the funniest part, and I post that. And that's a note for me. It's also because I don't really trust that I'm going to live
like a journal.
It's a journal. That's all it is. My Instagram especially, I don't post as much to TikTok anymore, but Instagram, it always has been, not become, from the very beginning. All of these platforms were just journals. There's some days literally I will look at my Instagram just to see, okay, what did I do on Wednesday? Because today's Friday, and yeah, I don't do this shit for money. But it became obsessive. I realized, why am I killing myself posting every day? So I stopped. And, I also realized that spiritually, I had gotten the validation I needed. I pretty much got that rather soon after I started posting, and my account started to grow. And I also learned that it's not enough. This sounds terrible, but for me, it's not enough for your loved ones to tell you that you're wonderful and you're great. It's not. And for people that might not have these loved ones, like a wife and children and my in-laws and my dad, to tell me this, they might think, how dare you? I would just love to have somebody alive that would tell me I'm great, that's related to me. And to those people, I apologize for that statement. But what I mean by it's not enough, I could not do what I do without the love and approval of those people I just stated. But for me, being validated by people that don't love me and have no reason to appreciate what I do, but somehow they do, was extremely meaningful to me in terms of my purpose. I realize I'm not driven by money. I'm a terrible businessman. I know you are a good one. I'm an artist. I've always been one. I'm a nightmare to live with. My wife will tell you, I put on a jolly persona, but I'm an artist and I'm sporadic and erratic and volatile. And yeah, I just go all over the place. But I was going back to why I took the break. I realized I went from feeling validated now to becoming addicted to that feeling of validation. Basically, this is very childlike what I was doing. Like when a child shows you like a bottle cap at the beach and they're amazed and they show it to you, they come up to you and they're like, and you have to go like, wow, and then they bring you a straw that somebody, and you, wow. Well, that's what I was kind of doing to myself without realizing that the first or the second or the third wow, that was enough. But I keep bringing my thing up. Hey, look, broken glass. I was treating my social media like, hey, mommy, look. Oh, you like that? Hey, look what I got now. And I was needing that. I got addicted to being approved of. Because I realized at the time that, wait, I kind of feel good about myself now. I feel better. I get it. I feel like now, I guess I am appreciated by some, and that I do have something that I can offer to other people, I hope. And when I realized that, and then I asked myself, so let's say you stop right now and everything just starts to crumble. Your following starts to fall, your engagement, all these numbers, algorithms. What if that just starts to fall? At that point, I had to say, in order for me to continue doing this, if I can't say that's okay, then I'm not going to make it in this, if I want to make it in this social media world. So I had to say, it's okay, man. It's all right. It's okay. If we lose followers, if we lose potential sponsors and partners and this and that. So I'm still training, but people aren't seeing the heavy that I used to post daily. And yes, my engagement has plummeted. My follower count did go up, but it was very slow, and it's okay. It's all right. There's a part of me that's like, let's see you take an actual drop in followers. Let's see that number go backwards, and let's see how you take that. I think it'll be okay, man, because spiritually I feel more connected to what I'm doing. My body now, it's collapsed. When I finally let go and just, man, my body now is telling me how damaged it is from all those years. The average person, male or female, and regardless of age, could probably run faster than me down a football field. It's like I kind of lost my nervous system to go fast. Like I'm having to teach myself how to run, how to sprint again. I don't feel like, those park benches where people have picnic lunch at Kapiolani, those green benches.
Wait, you're almost 60. Why are
No,
you sprinting?
I'm 55.
Yeah, I know.
I'm
That's
55.
almost 60.
Yeah.
So why are you sprinting?
No, when I say sprint, I'm talking faster than jogging. Okay. So I'm not like, no Usain Bolt or any of that stuff. I am just talking old man sprinting. And I'm trying to get that back now. My nervous system just collapsed. Even now, when I get up out of chairs, I feel joints. I feel my right shoulder. Yeah, just things, man. But it's okay because I felt like I was going to die. Still might, who knows? But I hope I pulled out in time to just let my body heal. And I'm also, like driving here, I used to always have a podcast or something going on my phone. There's always some digital media, just, always. And I've stopped that. I realized I've just been beating myself with digital stimulation, visual, So now when I walk my dogs, I don't have AirPods in. I walk them. I'm present. And I'm just trying to reconnect. I say this to my wife.
Reconnect with what?
My analogies, I tell her, I got to get back to the 80s. That's my metaphor for before I had all these things, all these headsets and things. Can it just go back to that time where people had to just sit with each other and figure out how to pass time? We had nothing to hold on to. I say the 80s because I was a teenager back then. Those are formative years for me. So I remember things vividly from that time. And also, we didn't have those cell phones until the early 90s. And I miss that time before cell phones. Yeah. I do, man. As inefficient and as dirty as those public phones were, the ones at the mall that you actually have to use before. People in the old days, man, when we were all stuck in a room together, or you're waiting at a wedding, you're waiting for the groom and the bride to show up. People had to talk back then,
So
it's human connection.
Human connection.
Let me add, I got all over the place. Human connection is what I crave now. Like I said, I don't post. I'm actually supposed to be I'm on a contract to make an exercise app. I'm late. And I went to the movies with my wife and my daughter this weekend, and all this whole week, but I've spoken with them and they understand. But I've told them, dude, right now, reconnecting to my humanity and the humans that share my humanity is the only way I can actually make your app and physically go forward with hopefully giving more information that I hope is helpful is to do what I'm doing now. Just take that 2 steps, not 1 step backwards. I'm taking 2 or 3, as many as I need to in order to go forward. But it's been good. And like you said, you don't realize how much pain there is until you turn it off, until you just start dialing back.
So it's not there.
Until it's not there, yeah. The analogy I used to give, more important than not training is not having the obligation or the onus, the weight of having to post something every day for my social media. because I had in my mind, well, people are used to you being the 55-year-old guy that no matter what gets out there every day and hits it and does something different and new. And I was thinking, that actually is the way I like to train. I don't like to plan shit. I don't even know what I'm going to do until I get out there. But I don't think other people need that much of this lesson because it's not necessarily the best way for older guys to train. But my thing has always been, like you said, it's my journal. I'm not posting exercise programs on my social media. It's not for that. Yeah. So
My training is watching you train, and then I eat ice cream.
well, I eat ice cream too.
Oh man, look at this guy's like eating chips. Check this out, Bill. That's literally how I watch it.
Here's a little mystery about that. I'll bet you I eat as much or more ice cream than you do. And I eat a ton of shit. Like I argued with my wife. We saw Despicable Me 3 or 4 or whatever. We saw that at the theaters. And I'm the one arguing for the large popcorn with the refill. Because they have the medium popcorn with the refill. I'm like, what the point? It's a few bucks more. Let's get... And I eat all that down. I drink the big ass Coke. I drink that because if I'm going to the movies and I'm going to have popcorn and I'm going to kind of put some shit in my body, I'm going to do it right. And I'm going to do it with high fructose, corn syrup, Coca-Cola. I'm not recommending other people do that, but that's always how I've rolled.
But that's not every meal, right?
Not every meal, but I've wanted to do an experiment where all I do is eat fast food for a month, like that guy on Super Size Me. Because I'm not going to actually do that because it would be, but here's what I would know in 30 days of eating like
Garbage. Yeah.
What are those really yummy crackers that everyone likes?
The Biscoff ones?
No, the round ones that come in that
Ritz?
Ritz crackers, that kind of shit. I could literally eat Ritz crackers, Ho-Hos and Ding Dongs and Twinkies out of the box. You give me for 30 days. I don't know why.
What about
seriously
90 days?
I don't know. I can't say 90 days what that would do to me. I think 90 days of eating that way, I'd probably end up like that guy who did that movie Super Size. I believe he also passed away.
Yeah.
Now, whether it's because of actually making that documentary, I doubt it. But I would venture to guess 90 days of eating that kind of shit, I'm still human. But 30 days, I'm pretty sure, because if you saw the amount of stuff that I actually eat in a month, that people would consider like you can't get ripped
Like what?
on
Like
that.
a plate lunch or something, or what?
And name it, any plate lunch. I have plate lunches frequently.
I mean, you're
in the
right
month.
next to Rainbows. I mean, that's a good.
I go there so often, they give me gift cards.
Uh-huh.
Okay. The majority of the stuff that I eat in a day, a week, or a month is what most people would consider, at the very generous assessment, would be it's random. But I eat mac salad. I eat both scoops of rice. I need to carb up because if I do the stuff that other people do, like right now I am intermittently fasting. I woke up this morning at 6, but this is some coffee and I've had some water. And I'm not on a strict eating window. When I feel like eating, that's when I'm going to eat.
How much are you eating? Are you eating a lot?
Calorically, it probably wouldn't be a lot, but sometimes, and I know I'm doing this wrong. I know I'm doing this all wrong, but when I get that eating window, man, like I will get hungry to the point where if there's like takeout leftover things from 3 different restaurants, I will freaking take them out. Like last night, you ever eat cold vegetable tempura?
No, that's mushy.
Mushy. Like who even takes tempura home for takeout, right?
That's gross.
Right? Sorry, my wife is Chinese. Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
So not saying I'm not eating it. That's just it's
right.
gross.
But actually, in all fairness to her, when she puts that
still
thing in the
eat it.
toaster oven, it's killer. She brings it back to life. But no, forget it. Last night, I was wholesale hungry, man. By the time it occurred to me I'm hungry, I'm eating, when you take home ramen in the thing and you don't separate the soup, so it turns into one soggy.
Yeah.
I just took that thing out. And cold, soggy, vegetable, oily tempura batter and
So
everything.
how in the heck do you stay in that physique?
I don't know. Honest to God, if someone would take labs on me and, the Kirkland whipped cream, I get strawberries, clean them, cut the stem off, and then one after another, I call it strawberry shortcake. I posted a video of me doing that with my dog.
And what were the comments on that? Like,
people like, do you really eat? No, it was a waffle. It wasn't even a strawberry. It was a waffle. And I'm like, and people are like, is that a joke? I'm like, that's not a joke. That's my breakfast.
that would be nuts if you actually, if you posted that, like, this is what I eat on my meals.
I've done that on occasion, and I could literally post me eating something shitty every single day.
But then
I'm not
people
sure
might do that.
That might be a mocking
Yeah.
a lot of people's efforts. Whether I intend to do that or not, I'm pretty sure that would. It would diminish what other people are working very hard to do. It's sort of like these guys that have money and they're just throwing money and you literally watch it blow into a canal. So not even anyone can go and get it.
Yeah. So if that food was affecting your workouts, would you stop eating those kinds of foods?
Here's what. I have a lot of stuff wrong with me, inflammatory issues. And then most likely a lot has to do with my diet. Yeah. So even though I'm able to calorically burn it, that doesn't exonerate me from the consequence, of like
But you can handle physical pain.
That's also a detriment.
Right? Maybe it's whatever pain you can't handle.
Because I put up with significant abdominal pain for 2 years before I was diagnosed with advanced colon cancer.
Oh, and you didn't do the colonoscopy?
No, man. For 2 years, I was having like a kind of it felt here, but the cancer was actually in my ascending colon.
How old?
42.
Oh, so kind of before you're supposed to do the colonoscopy. Yeah.
Now things have changed. Now they're telling people 40, do them. But back then, this was in 2012. They weren't telling people that. I felt like I had an ulcer. Like I would eat, and then this would be like sore. I'd get sore right here. And this is when I was a younger child, I'd feel ulcers and things, or like just gastric upset. But all that time, they said it was a slow growing tumor. They said, how did you not know this was? I said, you had to have felt something. I said, I just thought I had indigestion. They put me in an emergency surgery. This was so big. How
did they even find it?
Okay, good question. I went to work one morning and I remember feeling like my guts were like, oh, I felt like it could like I had stomach flu or something, right? And then my client, when I showed up and it was early, it's like 6 a.m. I come over, hey, what's up? And he comes and he looks at me, dude, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, man. I'm all trying to put on my chipper demeanor, right? He's like, you look pale, man. Are you all right? And I was feeling really tired that morning. I couldn't wake up. I'm like, I'm fine. And then he says, you know what, dude, I got to call your wife. Turns out I was slurring. So what I felt was, hey, what's up, man? He said, hey, buds, what's up? He said I was slurring. And that's the thing about when people are in trouble. They feel like they're saying words. But I felt like I was talking, hopefully as clearly as I am to you now, to him then. In my mind, I'm like, hey, what's up, Ben? How you doing? But I go, hey, Ben, what's up? He thought I was having a stroke. Anyway, long story short, we go to the ER, and I had to use the bathroom. And when I went to the bathroom, blood. Red blood. This tumor had gotten so advanced that I was actually bleeding from the tumor. So I had to go into emergency surgery because, peritonitis is, right? If the contents of your intestines leak into your abdominal cavity, septic, massive shock and death, right? So they put me in front of the line. Shout out to Straub Hospital. They took good care of me. And they removed my ascending colon. And then they followed up with 6 months of chemotherapy. And then, so I finished that 2013. And I was just physically and emotionally destroyed. And then that was also the year CrossFit really exploded. So now I'm trying to go back to work after my business collapsing because I couldn't really maintain it. I'm competing with CrossFit and I'm on the verge of going out of business. And luckily, somehow things worked out. I had some faithful, good clients that just stuck with me. Well, and then, things kind of turned. And then my daughter was born and she should not have been born.
Why?
Because when you get any kind of chemotherapy, they tell you before they start it, if you would like to have more children, we recommend that you bank your stuff. And at the time, my wife and I, we were emotionally so beat down. We're thinking, no, we're not going to have another child. And that was very hard. But somehow, even though we didn't do what the doctor said, my second one was born. And she was born healthy, very healthy. So, when I told you asked me what are the things that kind of changed you? Well, cancer, it taught me that I'm very mortal. And there's a lot of guys like me, or people maybe, not just guys. There's a lot of people like me, especially young. And this is the way young people should think. Young people should think I am indestructible. That's too bad that happened to the guy next to me and that guy there. I'm still here and I'm going to go move forward. The person, if you ask me, my body would do anything I told it to, just about, except I can't surf for shit. And water, I suck. But up until that point, it was like a noble, faithful mule. I could kick the shit out of it. And to a degree, I still do now. But back then, I was harsh. Sugar. Oh, God, you should have seen how much sugar I consumed back then. Clinical amounts of it, in hindsight. Terrible eating disorders. I could eat boxes of chocolate macadamia nuts. Boxes of those. 2 of those for breakfast.
Like one time? Oh.
One time. Sunday morning, that was my routine. We had a neighbor who worked for a Maui Mac or whatever, and they'd give everybody in the building boxes of extra chocolate. And so every Sunday, I knew there'd be these boxes, and they'd leave them in the lobby. So much people would even stop grabbing it. So I'd go downstairs, grab 2 of them, make myself a big cup of coffee, and then Sunday morning, I'd just eat, drink, do whatever, clean the house, eat. 1, 2 boxes, easy, no problem. Then go have hamburgers and fast food later on, just junk. So yeah, going back to your question regarding my diet, that is one of the things that I do need to address, because I do have a lot of orthopedic and still performance issues that I know will improve with dietary. Okay. But at the same time, when I try to do too keto, the carnivore diet fixes everything. As soon as I go low carbohydrate, my body just falls apart quickly. So I just have to clean up the fried stuff. I don't drink soda that much, by the way. I eat much less ice cream than I used to, because I do believe that part of having this body and enjoying it is enjoying it. Being able to eat what everyone else is, not making a big fuss at a restaurant, not asking the waiter 18 questions before I even order. I just order. Old school.
What about your clients then? Or somebody, so let's say somebody like me that, man, I got to try to watch a meeting.
I tell them to go to somebody else.
And all that kind of stuff.
Clients that want weight loss, I really respectfully, I would prefer them to somebody else. I get very little personal inspiration out of weight loss as a goal. It should be a byproduct of lifestyle and training habits. So when people want me to actually assess their diets, I have no idea how to do that. Just so people know, don't come to me for your diet. Unless you want to talk about how to have fun at a luau, I am a movement guy. I like to teach people how to connect with their bodies, regardless of what diet. I just want to take people that feel like they can't do anything and show them that they can. I'm not interested in elite special forces, athletes, high school, college. There are way, way better guys and tons of them out there that can do a much better job with those people than I ever will. Mm-hmm. My thing is being a normal guy. I'm a normal guy. I was not an athlete or a jock. I was on the outside of all of that in high school. Just so people know, I didn't even graduate college. I tried for 1.5 years and I was at the peak of my bodybuilding, and I didn't get into the military. I didn't really think I'd have to go to college, and I tried and I didn't. So I like people to know that, because people think I'm like some clinically trained expert sometimes, and I am not. Everything I know is experiential. The only PhD I hold is in myself. And that's why when I share something, I always frame it in the sense that this is what I do, or this is what has worked for me. And I never tell people this is what you need to do. Or if you want 6-pack abs, do this. I don't tell people. I just say, this is what I do. Whether it's going to work the same for you, I have no idea. I hope it does.
So the time where you had the cancer and then your daughter coming, that was close together.
Yeah, that was the scariest and the most transformative. That was religious for me. I remember I was so terrified, because coming out of that chemo, I had only a few faithful clients stayed with me. I just send them lots of love. And all the clients that left, I fully understand. And I still love them.
So what's a story around that?
Let me tell you. Okay, yeah. I'm getting there. So I am at the lowest, physically, spiritually, psychologically. I mean, chemo destroys your brain, and at least my brain, it did. And so I was in a dark place. So I'm trying to get back to my...
And I lost a lot of weight?
You know, it's weird. I didn't lose weight. I
you
kept
didn't?
my weight. You know, everyone said you should fast when you're on chemo. All these videos on fasting and chemo.
So even though you're missing your colon and stuff, you still kind of ate, and on chemo you still had the same appetite?
Yeah, I ate. I felt like, man, I had to eat high density fat and protein. And if I got low, I could literally feel my body starting to implode. Like I'm being sucked down a drain. And as soon as I'd eat, my wife made me beef barley soup with lots of bone marrow and all kinds of bone broth. And
Your wife is spectacular.
my wife, we could do a whole podcast on her. But between being completely destroyed from cancer and having my image of myself just in the process of being redefined, I'm not going to say destroyed. What is it? Something that's a blessing and a curse at the same time. And it's not a curse, but
It's like a contrast.
yeah, just like a contrast of events where my wife, we learned that she's pregnant and that we're now going to have, assuming the child didn't have birth defects, miracle baby. But now I'm looking at, I am going to actually have 2 children. So I have this now thing where I'm at the lowest confidence level I could ever be in. I now have both the joy, the miracle of my second daughter. That was massive. I remember shortly after she was born, and a friend of mine noticed that she could tell. She was a client, and I'd been working with her for years. She could tell I was freaked. And she said, look, man, it seems like you need to take a break. I have a beach house out on the North Shore, Keiki Beach. Here's the keys. I want you to take your young family out there, take your dogs, and just go this weekend. You have to go. And I'm like, really? She said, yeah. So I went. She sent me there, and 2 things happened. I was out there with my older daughter, Barry. She's now 20, but she was only 9 when my second one was born. And so Leslie and Teddy is my second one. They're in the beach house. And Barry and I, this was before we went home that day. It was our last day, it was Sunday. And I took her down to the beach. I said, sweetie pie, let's do one more thing before we go. She said, okay. I said, you want to look for puka shells? And on this Keiki beach, they had actually nice puka shells. I'm like, okay. And so we're down in the sand. And the whole trip, I was worried. The whole trip, my heart was so heavy with how am I going to make a living? The whole trip, I was trying to enjoy the sunsets and the beauty of the beach. When we get back to town, everything, my entire financial burden is still there. And I just had a knot in my stomach. And then Barry, she said, Daddy, is there any such thing as a purple puka shell? I said, no, sweetie, but you want to look for one? She's all, yeah. I said, okay. So now we're looking for literally like a unicorn. Have you heard of a purple puka shell? Okay, long story short, moments after she asked me that, or it seemed like very soon after, out of all the stuff that was in the sand in front of me, it's like one of those divine, you know, like in the movie, you see this, oh, there's even music, this thing. And I reached down and I grabbed it. Not only was it the biggest puka shell by far, it was almost the size of a dime, perfectly round, with a puka in it, and no sand in the puka. But Evan, I'm not shitting you. There was a ring, just a ring on this puka shell that looked black. For some reason, when I held it up, something said, hold this up. When I held that up to the light came through that ring and it was purple. That shell, at that moment, I knew things were going to be okay. It was almost like a religious, something told me, bro, you can go home, enjoy your family. Things are going to be okay. That shell is one of the most precious things I own. It's actually Barry's. She can take it with her forever. But of the things that I would never want to hear our family lost, that shell was magic. And I drove back, and my heart was, and I was able to conduct myself from that place in a way that things came back, man. Because if I had that fear, that panic, that desperation in me, people smell that. It stinks like dog shit, man. And that's what I reeked of. And then I thought, okay, if I get through this cancer and I don't relapse, and I've got this second child. And by the way, Barry, since she herself was 4 years old, had been asking for a sibling all those years. And that was the one thing we couldn't give her. She said, Daddy, I'm so glad that Teddy showed up because I stopped asking for it. And we noticed that she had stopped asking for a sibling in the recent years. So when my wife told Barry, she picked her up from school, and after the pregnancy was well established beyond normal miscarriage time, so baby was solid, and Leslie's partially showing, she took Barry to Teddy Burger on Baratania Street and told her that you're going to have a sister or you're going to have a sibling. We told her later after we found out it was a girl. And that's why my younger daughter, her name is Teddy, because we asked Barry, what are you going to name your sister? She said, Ariel, or, all the Disney princesses, right? Okay, cool. But she figured out, okay, Disney princesses aren't happening. Then one day she said, Teddy. I said, Teddy. Oh, that's an interesting, not Julie or not Sherry. She said, no, Teddy. I said, why? Because when Mommy told me that she was coming, I was at Teddy Burger. And something like, since you gave me a boy's name, I thought I'd give her a boy's name too. I'm like, I love boys' names on girls. So that's how she became Teddy. That's just a side story. But yeah, I hope I've answered your question on like what it was like to come from that time where I was at. But that purple puka shell, that was so profound for me. That was one of the most amazing things. It's like God or whatever speaking to me.
And then things just picked up after that?
No, not right after. There were still some dicey periods. There was a lot of times where we were pressed financially and not having my business the way it used to be. It's a big thing on your confidence. You also learn that it doesn't matter how front and center you might have been before this happened. Everybody, it's so easy to forget. I remember when Robin Williams, when he passed away, when he died, the whole world was just Robin Williams. Every story, everywhere you looked, it was Robin Williams for about 48 hours. I learned from that period, you're just a man. In many ways, you are less than average. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's like you are a man. You're just a person. You're very flawed. There's a lot of things wrong with you. You are damaged. But it's better to know that than not. At least have awareness. I don't have the answers. I'm not fixed yet. As we speak here, I am damaged. I'm sure you can tell. But my awareness, my peace with the fact that I am not at peace, I think will help me get as close to, and I don't think, it's sort of like trying to chase perfection. I don't think we'll ever be completely healed or completely sane, but I think the pursuit of that is what creates a lot of good things.
All these challenges, instead of like, why did this happen to me? It's like, why did this happen for me?
Now I was wondered why I had this body, why I was given this, because clearly this body I was given, not just among Asian people, but amongst people in general, it is considered a very unusual body type. Oh, something I didn't discuss. Usually I discuss this in the beginning of podcasts and things, but I like people to know up front, as I look into your eyes, I have never, ever used steroids or performance-enhancing drugs, ever. I don't even use pharmaceutical drugs. I don't like pharmaceuticals, prescribed or otherwise, to me. But I've never used steroids.
That's an interesting one because I've always wondered that too. You know what I mean? Because you're just like a freaking specimen. If you took off your shirt, it's like, look at this guy. Right. Oh my God, put your shirt back on. Like, and I see the comments in the threads too.
Mm-hmm. Even if the comments are meant to be a little bit, a little barb on them, I fully understand. And I'm not offended. In fact, on another conversation I had recently, do you know who Clark Bartram is? He's a big fitness influencer on everywhere. I was on his podcast a few days ago, and we were talking about that because he's currently on Instagram. And remember Muscle Media 2000, that magazine?
Yeah.
Clark was a cover model back then. You'd know him if you saw his face. Anyway, we're talking about that, all the comments we get about us being on steroids, because he too has never used TRT. And, he's talking about how, sometimes it's a little bit annoying or frustrating. And I said, I can understand how it could be. But my thing is, at my age, as long as I'm getting those comments on the videos I'm posting, I'm good.
It's like a compliment.
Yeah, man, because if people are, like, if the way
nobody guesses that about me.
I had a buddy, like, my buddy said, bro, if I got one time in my life, someone accused me of being on steroids. That
Yeah.
would be like I would just jump up and down, like be like, yay. He was
Yeah.
joking, but yeah. So in terms of the steroid thing, but no, the original question was something to do
No,
with
the original
my
question was, I
body.
mean, you've gone through a lot of stuff. Everything from childhood time to cancer and then your daughter. So the question a lot of people ask in that is like, why does this happen to me? And they get the answer. So the question is, why did this happen for me?
Yes. Okay. So that's why I got off on the tangent. So I was given this body, and I always wondered why, because I was never an athlete in high school. In fact, I was socially so awkward. I couldn't even play on a team. I never did anything college. In my prime years, I didn't really do anything with this. And that's what tormented me later on in the years. I was thinking, I was given this body. And I used to kind of cover myself up a lot because even now I wear very baggy things. And I always wondered, why was I given this? And then I got in the age 30, prime years. Nope, no sports team. You're not a UFC fighter. Age 40, well, you're kind of over the hill for doing, so, it could be a kettlebell coach, man. And I love this. So that's what I did in my 40s. And then by the time I'm 50 now, I'm like, oh, you're just 50. Prior to 2020, when I started doing the lockdown workouts thing, my conditioning was so bad. I think one of the first videos I posted, I set a timer for 10 minutes and all I did was put an iPad with a selfie camera, which I didn't know was bad quality at the time. Yeah. And all I did was struggle doing push-ups for 10 minutes. And I remember for some reason that video, I posted it. We started getting all these notifications of people subscribing.
From the first one?
From like the first or the second video I posted. Like, remember that time when the lockout where you could step outside and it was quiet? No cars, nothing?
Yeah.
I remember it was that quiet in our neighborhood, in our house, and my wife saying, did we get hacked? I said, why? What's wrong? I had email notifications turned on. Our email was just blowing up. And that's when I started, and then people started following me. And Evan, as stupid as this sounds, in 2020, I knew that people made money somehow off of YouTube and social media, but I never cared. And I never thought I'd be a person like that. So when people were subscribing and commenting, I wasn't even responding. I just posted that for my clients. I don't care about that social media thing. But people started asking me to post more of those workouts, which I did. And then my daughter said, Daddy, your YouTube's kind of going off, man. You're at 50,000 subscribers. And I'm all, is that good? Because I thought all the big time people are 1 million. She don't know, 1 million on like TikTok or Instagram, but 50,000 on YouTube. That's good, Daddy. She said, oh God, you got to get on TikTok. So then I started clipping a little short thing from my 10-minute YouTube video, TikTok. I think my second video got 1 million something views and my subscribers started to just go off. I can't even do that pull-up that I did anymore. But that TikTok went off hard. And then Barry, my older one, she said, Daddy, your TikTok account is really doing well. If you can do the same thing on Instagram, that's harder than TikTok to get. I'm like, why? So I just started repurposing, with the TikTok watermark. Mm-hmm. I put that just on my Instagram account. And that was like the account I had for my classmates at Punahou. And those videos started taking off on TikTok. It was much slower than on TikTok. And then I realized, well, the watermarks don't help. Because then I learned taking the repurposed TikTok video with all the TikTok like it's funny when you go back to people's things on 2020, everyone's videos on Instagram have the TikTok watermarks until they learned TikTok doesn't like that.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Instagram, right? Instagram's going to penalize you for that.
Well, you have software that will remove that watermark, but it's not like you're fooling Instagram. They still know the damn video came from TikTok. Yeah. And so those videos didn't really get pushed. Like a video that would get 1 million or 2 million views on TikTok just going off, I could get like 3,000 views on Instagram until I learned you got to post to Instagram directly. And when I started giving Instagram that first love, then the Instagram started to respond similar to TikTok. And this might sound a little like, very social media thing to say, but one time my wife and my daughter, we were all talking about this with my family and like how this thing is growing. And we're trying to figure out, why is this thing growing? Why is this thing popular like it is? And then the first question, my daughter, she said, Daddy, if from day one, every video you've posted, you were wearing a shirt, do you think this would work? I said, you know what? I don't think so. I feel like a lot of the reason why people watch my videos is because I have a level of muscularity that's considered unusual, especially for someone of my age. I see a lot of guys that are way better shape than me, but I don't think this would have worked in my 40s because there's plenty of guys in their 40s who are rock solid. At 40, until I got cancer, I was great. So I guess it was just perfect timing, but I always wondered why I was given this body. Going back to this why. Clearly there's something, why me? All I'm doing is eating junk, shitty food, running around doing whatever I want, not averaging less than 5 hours of sleep. Only in the last 3 months have I been trying to get more than 6 or even 7 hours of sleep recently. That's the way I've lived. Even after cancer, 4 or 5 hours of sleep.
And then the workout minutes?
Yeah.
One time a day?
One time a day. And then walking my dogs.
How many days a week?
Well, up until recently, every 7 days a week.
Oh.
Holidays, rain or shine. Didn't matter if I'm in Japan, if I'm in New York, something, I'm going to post. But I feel like as I kind of go forward, like with this, as my accounts expand, I guess what I'll call my narcissism that I built this with, I realized a long time ago, somebody taught me this. I asked somebody, how do my videos actually get seen? They said, well, oftentimes you'll see a grid of little thumbnails and people will just glance at this array of thumbnails from all these different creators. And it's just like whatever catches their eye. So if you make your thumbnail catchy, then they'll tend to watch your videos. What I found for my videos, if anytime I could find an angle that showed a lot of muscular definition and it also kind of looked like a gnarly, like I just happened to be cleaning a kettlebell, but in the thumbnail, almost when it's small, it looks like this kind of muscular chest and abs, and it looks like I'm throwing a punch. I found those thumbnails did very well. So I'm realizing now is kind of the hook, just to get people to come. And then all that crazy shit I was doing was just to give people variety on what they're already doing. I wasn't telling them how to do it or what, but I was just offering them options. That's what all the crazy stuff was. This might not resonate well with the people that originally started following me, but now I realize I can be of better service to people by teaching them how to begin and stick with exercise in a way that they can stick with. I told you I'm making an app, and this company that hired me to do so wanted me to do all these esoteric orbit or infinity lunge with a kettlebell and all these big movements. I was like, who are those for? Those, if I'm being honest, those are things I do to make me a better martial artist. But if you're not in that mindset, how big is that audience? Versus the amount of people who are 10 years younger than me and older who have injuries and they can't figure out, well, if I can't do a full push-up, even one, and I can't squat without 3 different things popping and clicking on me, I'm just too old or I'm too beat up to exercise. And that's the program I'm making for them now. You just break down an exercise, say a squat, instead of saying, okay, squat. No, you break it down into 5 zones. Zone 1 is just bend your knees and straighten them. Bend your knees, straighten them. And you got to be able to do that a lot. Because a lot of guys that can squat heavy, they're surprised at how hard it is to just unlock what I call bend, unbend. So you go from barbell squat position, you just hinge your hip back, let your knees unlock, and then stand up from there. It's like a 1/10 squat. And you do that over and over. And guys are amazed at how after a few reps of what seems like something they don't even think of, the very beginning of a squat, how as within a few reps, they can't make their legs straighten at the exact same rate. Because if in a few reps at zone, we call that zone 1, because that's a form of fatigue, not being able to coordinate both limbs at the same time. It might not feel like fatigue, but it is. So if at first they can do that a few times, and then by 15 or 16 reps, their legs are going, duk, duk, like duk, this lock out, lock, asymmetry, we make sure that they're good there first. Because any faults that occur in zone 1 will be amplified into zone 2, zone 3, zone 4. It's simple. You don't even need an app. If you can't squat, don't worry about it. Zone 1, zone 1, zone 1, zone 1. Get really good there. Zone 1 will then turn into zone 2. And then your body, if you build it strength from the very top, well, normally people just try to drop into what they see on the video, which is a full squat. Everything hurts. And then when they're done with that workout the next day, all of the injuries they had were aggravated because they basically just fell through zone 1, 2, 3, started to slow down on zone 4, and came to like a bouncing stop in zone 5. If you look at most push-ups, that's what they are. So I'd rather people do one zone 5 push-up, which is perfect, or a squat for that matter, than a lot of reps. It's very boring. You have to have a lot of patience or a lot of shit wrong with you. But this is how I have to train myself. This is not some dumbed down shit that I'm making for new people. This is literally this zone training that I'm telling you. It's how I'm able to do a push-up. I can't just drop right down and do a push-up. I mean, I could. But there's many things I would hurt not like that, not have to hide all of those things. I feel like my purpose now is to kind of pull away from myself, just put enough stuff out there to keep people just interested. And I'm hoping that some of this, and I'm changing my content flow. I still am going to train some heavy stuff for myself, but I don't want people to look at me and feel worse after they watch me. I want them to see that I'm struggling myself and that I'm no longer posting super heavy. A lot of like what I posted last night was this electronic cable resistance machine that I have to do. I can't even do full pull-ups right now because at the top, this shoulder, it's unstable. It's bone on bone. I don't know. But I need to maintain muscle mass. So I'm just training as close to that zone of instability as I can. So I might go zone 1, and zone 3, it starts to get a little shifty. For that day, I let go. Because if I strengthen through the zones, then eventually, even if I have some defects in the joint surfaces, the muscles will still be able to kind of protect me and position me so I can not make it worse. Right now, I just want to maintain muscle.
I mean, that's good. It can inspire people, especially the ones that aren't full on yet.
I guess what I'm discovering after, the social media has been a big lesson to me where, I went through these various things where, number one, I was first amazed that people cared about what I did. And then I became excited to provide more of that. If we're being honest, it had a lot to do with my insecurity because this was the first time strangers and people who didn't love me were telling me that what I was doing was helpful to them and good. And then I kind of pulled away from my family. If you ask them in the year from 2020 into that first year, I really kind of went into this rabbit hole with this whole thing where I'm just dialing in, just trying to push content. For me, the follower count was just an indicator that what I was doing was in some way helpful and in some way good. And it was a validation for me because if you've gone your whole life thinking that or wondering if you were worth anything and kind of feeling that you weren't, and almost by the time you're 50, you're kind of pretty sure nothing I've done really matters and nobody gives a shit. Nobody ever will. And when I die, this will all just mean nothing. In social media, I became not addicted to consuming it. To this day, I don't watch much social media at all. And if you want to talk about dopamine and all that, I became kind of addicted to the approval and what I felt was validation. And when you've spent that many decades and going back to I didn't realize how much pain I was in. And God bless every one of these human beings. I don't call them followers. They are human beings that reached out to me and to this day still do. They leave me messages and comments, and some of them I will never be able to actually read or respond to. But those people saved me. They really did. And this is coming from someone who's, I guess, in a way, if you could say in terms of just social media, I've been somewhat successful. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now, that the more successful I get in social media, if I'm not willing as I go forward and able to lose everything on my platforms, that would mess me up. Well, if somebody hacked my account or something, then I'm pretty sure I could build it up again. But that's not what this is about. My thing is I learned through all of this. I'm at just over 2 million followers on Instagram now. I am much more focused now. It's taken me a year to go from 1 million to 2 million on my family and my connection to myself and to just being present among other people. Like I say, when I walk my dogs before, I always had music or a podcast. I had a hat and sunglasses. I was covered up, not wanting people to recognize me or whatever. Now no glasses, no earbuds. I walk 4 dogs down the street at once, so I'm going to get attention. People yell out at me. They call out to me all the time. The other night I went to see Despicable Me 3 or 4, whatever. My wife and I were sharing a big soda, and we actually wanted more. So in the middle of the movie, I got up to refill it. And, during that time, there's nobody in the lobby. There were 2 young ladies there also refilling their soda. And one of them, excuse me. I said, hi. She says, my boyfriend follows you and he's a huge fan. Could I get a picture, please? I'm like, oh, of course, sure. That's the whole thing. And I'm holding my big giant soda, so I'm holding it down. It's like, but that connection with people. And they say things like, oh, I'm so sorry to bother you. Or I'd be so honored. I said, I always make sure that they know that I am honored to meet them and that I'm honored that they'd like to take a picture with me because I'm the same guy. It doesn't matter how many follow or how many people follow me. I'm more humbled by that now than I was when I was at 1 million. And I kind of started thinking, wow, I'm good. Well, people like my shit. But now I've kind of learned people do like your shit, but they're not going to like it. If you keep digging on yourself so much like this, you're starting to lose your center, man. This is where people lose it right here. You're starting to think you're the shit now, and you're not. So that's why I've been trying to dial myself back. I'm checking myself. Who's that? Ice Cube? Check Yourself? It's one of my favorite songs, man. Got to check yourself or you're going to wreck yourself. That was just a song to me when I was a teenager. That kind of always goes off in my head now. You got to check yourself, man. And if I start chasing those numbers or worrying about, oh, this number is falling, it has to be fine with me now. It has to be okay. If I get hacked, like I said, I'll build it back up again if I want to. If people just decide there's something better, say this AI comes up with something way better than Instagram, which it very well could. It's cool. I had a good run. And I will still try to figure out ways to provide information that I hope people will find helpful or in some way useful.
One of the themes that have gone throughout this conversation has been your wife and her support.
Yes.
So for people who don't know her, can you just share a story that would give us context on your wife? It would give us an understanding of who she really is and how much she means to you.
I'm learning a lot of things recently, like within the last year and a half. Well, geez, I guess we can go 2 years now because time flies. But I've had, and a lot of people who know this can tell, I have ADHD that I didn't really ever know. I mean, I didn't know. And by the way, I don't consider it a bad thing at all. I've been with my wife for 31 years. We've been married for 21, but we were going out for almost 10 before that. When I met Leslie, I was still living at home with my parents. And I was well into my 20s, man. I used to be so ashamed to tell people that. But I had some pretty significant issues. But when I met her, basically, Leslie and I moved to Los Angeles shortly after we started going out. Because we didn't fall in love all lovey-dovey like that. We were instantly very deep friends. She was so quickly my best friend on a level that no guy, no man or person has ever been. So I went from living with my mom to living with her. And I've come to realize carried the burden of basically my ADHD mannerisms that were unchecked and that I considered just normal, and that my mom tolerated horrendous amounts of this behavior. So I basically rolled that all over into my relationship with my wife over the course of decades, 3 decades. And like I told you, like I could go a whole long thing on cancer. And everyone says that I'm a real warrior for getting through cancer. In my case, not at all. The warrior was my wife. All I did was lie there and just go, oh, my tummy hurts. And my wife would bring me everything. She raised at that time, my only child, Barry, through some crucial years. That was also the time when Barry had entered Punahou as a 2nd grader. My wife was put here to raise our daughters. And she'll be the first to tell you that. So to have Barry coming home crying, and Barry was also holding things in. So she's dealing with my daughter just being wrecked at school, which anything that happened to Barry happened to Leslie tenfold. And then me languishing upstairs, and she's not sure whether she's even going to have me. Because back then we didn't know. We were fresh into this. But anyway, it's easy to go out and swim. I'm not easy. I don't want to diminish anyone that's actually done this. I mean no offense. But if you see someone drowning out in the ocean and you have the wherewithal to go out there and get them and bring them back, you've saved their life. But you did it quickly and you're off on your own way and everyone has a nice life. But my wife, it took her not just 6 months that I was in surgery and chemotherapy. It took her years afterwards to save my life every day. You know, it wasn't just like the cancer. The thing is my ADHD, I forget things often. Like when I'm talking with you, I keep having to ask you, I'm sorry, what were we talking about? I've learned how to do that now. Before I'd get frustrated and I'd be like, fuck, what the hell was I just saying? And I'd get all like that. Now I've come to realize you have this thing. Because you can tell I can fixate on a thought, but then I'll digress from the topic at hand. But now I've learned, okay, just sorry, what was I talking? And then hopefully one of us will get us back on track. So I guess if there's something I'd want people to know about, here's what I said. I had dinner with my dad the other night at Roy's, and we're talking about Leslie. And I've told maybe everyone but her this. If the only thing that occurred from my existence on this planet is that I got to live with my wife, Leslie, and I died in anonymity and obscurity, then I lived one of the best lives any human could ever have left. Even if we had no children and we made no money and no one ever knew our names, my wife, I know deep in my heart, and this is just for my soul and who I am, there's no one I could have encountered in 1,000 lifetimes that I think would be better for me than her. And how I am constantly amazed and grateful that I was lucky enough to live with her. I don't say to have her, she's not mine, but to live with her. She was her spirit. I consider myself one of the luckiest people on this planet for that alone. That's why, well, I still need to make money, and social media does make me a little bit of money, but I still train people. I still have all my clients. I still have to go after this. Nothing has really changed, but you know, my wife, she's the only reason why I can do what I do. She's the only reason why I can be here and talk to you this way. She is the foundation of our family. I just know how lucky I am now that I have her and that I have my daughters from her and that I can watch her raise them the way she does, which is, it's an art form, what my wife does. She is so good. And that is why my thing is, I always ask myself, like before I'd be obsessively wanting to go out, oh, the lighting is just right now. I need to go out and do a video. Now I ask myself the following question before I do social media or I do anything. What will I regret more in 20 years missing? Going to Despicable Me with my daughter and eating buckets of popcorn and soda with her? Or making my video for Instagram? Which in 20 years am I going to regret not doing more? And whichever one I choose is going to be the higher regret, that's what I defer to. I'm realizing I'm not getting younger, and because of my cancer history, also the radiation that I've been exposed to, as well as the drugs that were supposed to save my life, there can be secondary cancers and issues that come from all of that. I'm also a larger than normal person, so statistically, I'm not that sure I'm supposed to live as long as other people. So I could get news any day. And this is another thing I like people to know. There's a lot of comments you might have read where people say they wish they were me, or they want to be like me, or when they get older, they want to be like me. And I no longer leave this answer, but this is what I tell them. If you can avoid all the cancer, then wonderful. But don't wish you were me or don't want to have what I have. There's a reason why most people don't look like this. I could not work out for literally, you want another experiment? Have me literally sit in a bubble, like locked in a cell for 30 days. I'm not going to change. I'll have the same level of definition. My muscles, everything will look the same. But what matters is the connection to those people. This is finite. Like I said, even if nobody knew me, we're not having this conversation. But at the same time, I would have to say that I wouldn't have this perspective if I wasn't brought out of my depression, which was based on feeling useless. If I hadn't been elevated out of that place, I don't think I'd be able to have the perspective that I have on the other things in my life now. Like basically, I was at a point where I was so poor that at some point the social media and some of the feedback I got from the world gave me enough currency to actually start maybe getting a little place to live on the surface. And then once I was able to appreciate that, because like I said, I'm humbled. I'm 4 years into my social media with this thing, and I'm more humbled now than when I was at 500,000. I was less mature back then. Yeah, hopefully we grow. But I guess the thing I'm trying to get is love your people, man. And I always feel good after I do that. If I don't do what I'm supposed to do, but I did something with my family, and I'll make up for it. I'll call these guys. I tell them, I'm sorry, man. I'm going to be a little behind on that, on those videos that I promised you. But yeah, I'm trying to just maximize every day. I try not to take my days for granted. And that's another thing. If I do post something now physically, some of the things I post, nobody cares about it, and that's okay. But for me, if I posted it, it was something that for me was a win. Like lots of guys can squat 225 pounds. Lots of them can. I hadn't squatted that in a long time. So I did that a few weeks ago, and I was able to get 1 rep. So I posted that. A few people watched it, but it's okay, because another thing is, from a more morbid standpoint, is if I do die, just all of a sudden, you can just die in the shower, right? That at least there was a digital record of what I did between the years that I had cancer and the years that I actually left this world. So yeah, going forward, man, it's like this, like just 2 people sitting here talking. I know that this will be streamed over social media, but if there's one thing I could tell people, it's just to spend time with people. I don't say family, because a lot of people might not have family. So I don't assume that everybody has a family like I do. But at the end of the day, it's people. And we all have people.
Okay, well, I just wanted to acknowledge you, Bill. Thank you for coming, sharing this time with me. I've enjoyed being your friend for a long time.
I know, it's been
And
good,
your body
Evan.
looks about the same the whole time, but you've always been kind and nice, and I appreciate that. So
I appreciate you as well. Thank you for having me on your show, brother. It's fun.
yeah. If you resonate with Greater Good Radio, please join our community at www.greatergoodradio.com, where you can get access to exclusive content and offerings. Hope to see you soon.